Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for having me here today. As I was kindly introduced, I'm Alice Bentinck, and I'm one of the co-founders of Entrepreneur First. This morning, I wanted to talk a little bit about what is the DNA of a founder? What are the kind of things that we look like in our most successful founders? And then secondly, a little bit about how to get started. So what do you need to know before you actually get started and jump into building your own startup? Entrepreneur First was founded 7 years ago in London. Our raison d'etre, the reason we were founded, was to help the world's most ambitious and talented individuals, and particularly the most talented technologists, found their own startups. And in ecosystems outside of Silicon Valley, it can be particularly hard to find a co-founder. It can be particularly hard to know what idea to work on. And EF was designed to solve those problems. So we have a 9-month program in London, in Berlin, in Singapore, and in Hong Kong that takes individuals without an idea and without a team and turns them into startup founders. And for that, we only take 10%. I'm going to share some of the lessons that we have learned from doing this many, many times. We have more than 150 companies in our portfolio across the world. So what do you need to know before founding? Out of interest, how many people in the audience are thinking about founding a company? Excellent. How many people have already founded a company? OK, fantastic. Well, if you've already founded a company, then feel free to heckle and tell me what I'm getting wrong. So I thought it might be useful to start off by talking a little bit about what kind of people succeed. So we've done this now more than 1,000 times. We've had more than 1,000 people come through EF over the last 7 years. And we're beginning to see some very, very clear patterns around the kind of people that succeed. And I think if you're thinking about founding a startup, it's useful to use some of these indicators as a way of evaluating your chance of succeeding. Now, the nice thing about many of these indicators is that these are things that you can actually acquire or learn or achieve. And it's not a sort of yes or no process over whether you can or can't be a founder. So over the last 7 years, we've seen 1,000 potential founders from a wide range of backgrounds, whether it be computer scientists, roboticists, neuroscientists, physicists, business people, financiers. But there are some very common themes. So even if their backgrounds are very diverse, there are particular ways about how they think and about some of the things that they have that are very similar. The first thing is we select people, we look for founders who have what we call an edge. Now, edge is basically your personal unfair advantage compared to other founders. Founding a startup is really hard, and as you know, it's reasonably difficult to succeed. So what you want to do is give yourself the best opportunity of success. You want to use the assets, the knowledge, the expertise, the networks that you already have and leverage those to be successful. You want to compete in a market where you already have an unfair advantage. If you think about the number of things that you have to learn and do as a founder for the first time, you do want to be going into your idea and into your founding team already knowing about something. We typically see a huge number of people who come to us who say, yeah, I may have been in finance for 10 years, or I may have been working on machine learning for the last 3 years, but what I really care about is dating apps. Now, unfortunately, the person who wins in the dating app market is unlikely to be the person that's been on 10 or 20 dates. It's probably somebody who has unique knowledge, unique expertise, or unique skills in that field. So really what we're trying to do with this is to push the people that join us and to push people as they think about whether they should be a founder and what idea they should work on, to really say, what is your edge? Do you have an edge? Do you have an unfair competitive advantage? To give you some examples of this, this is Noor pitching at one of our demo days. So Noor, before she joined Entrepreneur First, had been in academia. And she completed her PhD, postdoc, and professorship at a university in Copenhagen. Now, when she joined Entrepreneur First, she didn't know what market she should be applying her technology to, but she knew that she had specific and rare insights in deep learning that very few others had. Now, it would have been crazy for her to work on anything else apart from using her skills within deep learning. What she ended up doing was founding a company called GTN, Generative Tensorial Networks, and she co-founded with a quantum physicist, and they're now looking at speeding up drug discovery. Now, she didn't know anything about drug discovery before she joined Entrepreneur First. She went through the process of having to learn about how pharma companies work, the problems that pharma companies experience. But she was an expert in this field of deep learning, and she knew that she could apply what she'd learned to this new market. So deep learning was her edge. She had a technical edge. A non-technical example. So Vivek joined us having spent almost 15 years in banking and having spent 10 years at RBS. He also had a huge number of interests when he joined us. He'd just bought a jazz club and was very interested in jazz and music and was kind of mildly tempted to work on something related to music. But he had 15 years in banking. He had 15 years of understanding the market, understanding the problems, understanding the customers, and having a network in that space that he could leverage when he became a founder. He founded a company called Multiply, and Multiply is an automated finance assistant that helps you manage your money. Yes, he didn't have the technical expertise. He co-founded with somebody who had that expertise, but he was able to bring an intimate knowledge of how finance works and how people think about managing their money. So the first piece there is really to think about, as you're considering founding a startup, what is the thing that you know more about than other people? What is the area that you have an unfair competitive advantage compared to other people? The second thing that we see our most successful founders have is personal exceptionalism. And this is a sort of slightly strange quality where it's very much, you know that the odds of founding a startup are that you will probably fail. But you believe that the odds are different for you. You believe there is something particularly special about you that means that you will succeed. In many ways, you believe you are the exception to the rule. One of our companies, Magic Pony Technologies, sold to Twitter for around $150 million last year. This was a company that was 18 months old, and the CEO, Rob Bishop, was 25 at the time when he sold his company to Twitter. Rob has particularly high personal exceptionalism, and rather going through the kind of traditional process of using a private bank, to help sell his company, he did it himself. He believed he would be able to do a better job at this. And actually, his level of confidence was part of what drove the deal forward and made it so successful. So personal exceptionalism is one of the other traits that we see some of our most successful founders have. The next one is growth mindset. So this is the idea that you actively seek out learning opportunities, and particularly learning in fields that you don't particularly feel that you have a natural affinity to. We often say when people join Entrepreneur First, welcome to your steepest ever learning curve, because this is really what being a founder is. In a normal job, in a normal career, you probably have a very steep learning curve at the very beginning, when everything is new, and you're having to learn new skills and new knowledge and expertise. It then plateaus. And it may plateau for a long time. It may plateau until your next promotion. Being a founder is very different. Being a founder, every 3 months, every 6 months, every 12 months, you're doing a completely new job. Managing a team of 6 is very different from managing a team of 12 to managing a team of 20, team of 60, team of 80, et cetera, et cetera. Fundraising 200K is very different to raising 6 or 7 million. There are so many different things that you need to learn, whether it be how to interact with your customers, how to sell, how to develop your technology. If you haven't read Mindset by Carol Dweck, I highly recommend it. I think it's one of my favorite books for founders. It has nothing in there about founding startups, but it really encourages this mindset of how can you seek out learning opportunities and how can you be open to new learning opportunities. A nice example of this is Joe Root. Joe was part of our second cohort and ended up founding a company called Permutive. Now, Joe was a technologist. He'd done a computer science degree and had always kind of thought that he would end up being CTO. Now, because of his team pairing, he ended up being CEO. He founded with somebody who was much more technical than him. And he had to learn very, very quickly how to be CEO. One of the things that he found most uncomfortable was learning how to sell. And there's this great story about him really pushing himself outside of his comfort zone, which included going and waiting outside the offices of his most important customer and basically waiting there until the CTO came out every day for 2 weeks, until the CTO finally relented and went for a beer with him. That CTO then became their first customer and led to them raising their seed round based on the traction they had from that customer. So Joe was very open-minded. He actively sought out learning opportunities. And again, we see our most successful founders do that. Very quickly to finish, I want to sort of run through many of the things that people think that you have to be able to start a startup. So typically, you need to know who you want to co-found with. You need to have a team. You need to know what you want to work on. You have to have an idea. You need to know everyone, a network of customers, of VCs, of employees. And you need to know everything. You need to know how to fundraise. You need to know how to build the product, how to sell to customers. This is insane. This is so difficult. And I think one of the key reasons we see people hold back from founding a company is because they run through this mental checklist of, I need to get an idea, I need to get a team, I need to know everything, I need to know everyone, and only then can I start a startup. Starting a startup is that process. The way that you develop an idea, the way that you found a team is by getting started. So a very brief bit of advice on each. The first thing is just to get started. So start experimenting with co-founders and understand that your first co-founder may not be the right fit. On Entrepreneur First, we see people go through 2.5 co-founders in an 8-week testing period. So it's unlikely your first co-founder is the right co-founder. But think about your network. Think about people who are 1 degree away from you, who are friends of friends. Think about programs like Entrepreneur First who can connect you to co-founders and start experimenting with them. On an idea, understand your edge. And again, start experimenting. The main thing that you need to do is get going. Start talking to customers. Start understanding how your idea might be successful based on your unfair competitive advantage. People often worry about their network. You already have a network. You may not call it a network. They may be your friends. They may be your family. They may be colleagues. That is your network. And think about how you can use that network to reach out to and find the people who will help you to be successful. And finally, we believe in what's called naive optimism. Sometimes it's easier to get on with a job when you actually don't know how hard it's going to be and you're ready to learn on the job. You will never know everything that you need to know before you found a company. Founding a company is hard, but that's kind of why it's exciting. So I'd strongly encourage all of you, as you're thinking about founding a startup, to first of all, get started. Second of all, make sure that you're working on your edge, your unfair competitive advantage. And thirdly, good luck. I hope you get started. Thank you very much.